Right, it's going live. Now live. I make it 7 o'clock.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's full town council meeting via Zoom. If you're out there watching on Wednesday, the 13th of January, 2021. Happy New Year to you. Hopefully, we'll make some progress this year. It'll be better than last year. Moving on to agenda item number 1, the minutes of the last meeting were attached. To receive, consider and adopt or otherwise the minutes of the meeting of the council held on Wednesday, the 16th of December, 2020. Page 46, 47, 48, 49 and 50. Have you all got a copy of those in front of you?
I'll move them, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kirk. Do I have a seconder, please?
I'll second those, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All in favour, please show your virtual hands. Thank you.
That's carried.
Thank you. Agenda item number 2, to note apologies received by the town clerk prior to the meeting. Town clerk, please.
Mayor, we have apologies from Councillor Jimmy Brooks, Carpenter, Claxton, Emson and Sutton.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 3, to receive any declarations of interest. None. Thank you. Agenda item number 4, public participation. None received. Agenda item number 5, the town mayor's announcements and correspondence. Details are all available on the council website, Facebook and Twitter site. But unfortunately, I bring you some sad news of a former town clerk. Unfortunately, we sadly have to say goodbye to to the ex-town clerk, Alan Crawshaw. A few of the new councillors won't remember this gentleman, but he did a lot. I've attended a few events with him, and I've got Councillor Edgington that's going to say a few words on behalf of the town council. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Those of us that have been on this, had the fortune to be on this council for a number of years, will remember Alan. I first met Alan about 30 years ago when he was a senior fire officer with Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue. He subsequently joined this authority, I believe, in 1993, and he remained in post until 2007. And during that time, he was an excellent clerk, and he and his wife threw themselves into all the activities relating to the town council, and he was very much involved in the work of the town as a community, and I believe he was a Rotarian as well. And Alan left the authority in 2007, and shortly afterwards, him and his wife relocated to the northeast to be closer to their daughter and her family. But sadly, we got to learn last year that both Alan and his wife Vivian wasn't in the best of health, and sadly Vivian passed away in the spring of 2020. And then we had the sad news at the turn of the year that Alan, as an actual fact, had passed away on December the 17th. And I remember him as a very good clerk, a man who had a dry wit. He was very good, and it was a pleasure to work with him. And personally, I was saddened to learn of his passing. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Edgington. Yes, he'll be sadly missed, and our thoughts are with his family. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 6, schedule of
I
payment.
think Councillor Anderson wished to speak as well.
Sorry, if you do wish to speak, please raise your virtual hands on the screen, because I've got my list up. I'm covering some of you up. Sorry. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. Just wanted to concur with Councillor Edgington. Alan and Viv was obviously, when I was mayor, they escorted me around to various places in Skegness and afar, and I remember them very fondly. Myself and my family, especially my son, who Alan took on, and yeah, it was a great year with Alan and Viv, and I remember, and I have photographs of that. He was, as Councillor Edgington said, he was a fire officer at Grantham. I met Alan over 30 years ago myself, and he actually joined this authority in 1994, not 93, if I remember rightly, because it was a year before I became mayor in 1995. So yes, I will miss them dearly. He was a great servant to the people of Skegness, and he actually promoted Skegness so hard in bringing us a better future for all of us here in Skegness. It's a sad day, but he's now reunited with his wife, Viv. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Steve Kirk.
Yeah, thank you, if I may, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I counted Alan and Vivian as personal friends. We spent many happy hours drinking beer together in Germany. And as both Councillor Anderson and Councillor Edgington said, he was a fantastic ambassador for this town. In the days when we only had 20 councillors, he was definitely the 21st councillor. He never stopped fighting for Skegness. I was very sad when he decided to step down as town clerk, because obviously we had a professional relationship there and a personal relationship as well. He was also involved with the governors at the Earl of Scarborough, then St Clement's College. There was very little that Alan wasn't involved with in the community. So as well as being an excellent clerk, he was a superb ambassador for this town. So he was sadly missed when he left, and he's certainly very, very sadly missed now he's passed away.
Thank you, Councillor Kirk. I must apologise for not seeing your hands. We've got a new feature on the screen I see tonight, so I can see your hands, so I don't have to have half of you covered up. So that's good. Moving on to agenda item number 6, schedule of payments for approval. The list of payments are attached. Have we got anybody wanting to question anything regarding to the payments? Councillor Dennis, sorry.
Yeah, good evening, Mr. Mayor. If you could put me in the waiting room for this one, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Any questions regarding the schedule for payments for approval? No. Okay. Do we have a proposal to remove these?
I'll propose them, Mr. Mayor.
I have a question, if I may, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, Councillor Kirk, Dan Kirk.
Payment on the 16th of the 12th, 20 to ARK for IP seats. What seats need an internet protocol?
These are effectively our phone charges.
If it's seats.
IP seats. It's a terminology for a phone, basically a phone.
That's
We
a
pay
new
for
one
each
for me.
phone we have, and there's a small call charge as well.
Thank you for that clarity.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson.
Yeah, I can't see it. I'm using my phone for actually the agenda. So yes, my question is basically the government has decided to set aside business rates, yet we are still paying business rates. I can't see it on here, or is it further on in the agenda? But I would like an explanation why we're still paying East Lindsey District Council when the pavilion is closed.
Town Clerk, please.
We did apply earlier in the year for relief, but we were told we didn't meet the criteria. Now, if we do meet the criteria now, I know that our finance officer has spoken with them. We're waiting for a further reply. If we now meet the criteria, then presumably we will get that money either back or credited against next year. But as of these accounts, we didn't meet the criteria.
Can I come back, Mr. Mayor?
Councillor Anderson, yes, please do.
Okay, thank you, Town Clerk, for that. I'm very disappointed to hear that we didn't meet the criteria. We have a cafe in there as well. Other cafes has closed in the town and had their business rates actually rescinded, as the government has stipulated. We also have an office building, etc. I just don't understand East Lindsey District Council saying no to us. At the end of the day, it's quite a large sum of money that we're paying, which for a building that we can't use because of the pandemic. Everywhere else is basically having that or not paying for business rates, yet we still are, which is a burden on our council taxpayer and local residents.
Thank you. Town Clerk, could I just clarify there isn't a typing area on Councillor Steve Emerson's? Is that the figure, the 124.40? Just I've never seen that. I've never noticed that before. That 60 pence deduction. That was all. Is it a typing error or is it just?
No, it will be correct. It's because different councillors have different tax and national insurance contributions associated with them, and obviously we don't go into the detail of that, but it does mean that in certain circumstances you'll see some councillors pay different amounts. And
I'm not querying that, Town Clerk. I was just making sure that there wasn't an error, because it just stands out on the page tonight for some reason, right in my face. I'm just making sure it wasn't shouldn't have been a 5 the same. That was all. Thank you. Okay, do we have I've got Councillor Anderson, you still got your hand up. Did you want to come back?
Hello, Mr. Mayor, I'll lower my hand.
Thank you. You've turned your camera off now as well, sorry. Got a new feature on here. Okay, do we have a proposal that these are moved?
I propose that we move these,
Councillor
Mr. Mayor.
Dankirk, thank you. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second them, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All in favour, please show. Thank you. Okay, can we bring Councillor Dennis back in, please, Town Clerk? Thank you. Agenda item number 7, Councillor questions to the Mayor, none received. Moving on to agenda item number 8, questions and 2 comments from Lincolnshire Police Representative, none received. Agenda item number 9, reports from council representative to outside bodies attached. The Environmental Agency stakeholder update provided by Councillor Billy Brooks.
Thank you, Mr.
Councillor Dankirk, you've got your hand up. Did you want to? Oh, sorry. It's okay. Thank you, Councillor.
Mr. Mayor, have we got the police present?
No, we've got their apologies tonight, Councillor Anderson.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brooks, sorry. Billy Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yep, the report's just as it is on the paper, and thank you to Kate for sorting that out again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 10, reports by the District Council and County Councillors attached. LCC December report provided by Councillor Carl Macy and Steve Kirk. Anything to say, Councillor Kirk, on any further updates or anything wishing to speak?
Thank you. Yeah, I've got nothing else to say on that report, although I do apologise. I did actually refer to some stuff in December, which was when the report was originally sent in. But if I may, can I just give you a quick update on Executive Board from East Lindsey tonight? And
yes, please do.
Is that okay? Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Yes, fine. Sorry.
So we've just had an Executive Board for the precepts for the coming year, and because we're doing our budget, I thought it might be pertinent to get it in where we can. The proposal that will go to full council will be 3.37%. So like a 3.37%, which is £4.95 per year, or 9.5 pence per Band D property. Bearing in mind, but people always need to be aware that when East Lindsey sets a precept, they're also raising money for the drainage boards as well. So that's encompassed in that. Going forward on the first year, because also part of setting this precept, we also try to set a 5-year plan, because we know there will be shortfalls going forward, because the comprehensive spend review hasn't happened because of COVID and various other things. That's still going to happen next year. I would anticipate, maybe the clerk knows better than I do, but it's anticipated it'll be sometime next year. So East Lindsey are looking at shortfalls of anything from £1 million a year upwards. But we're hoping to drive not only savings within services, but also increase our revenue through the work of Invest East Lindsey, and also with our work with what used to be Compass Point, which is now PS2, and our other partners. So that's where we are, 3.37%, which is 9.5 pence for a Band D per week. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kirk. Councillor Anderson?
Yeah, thank you. LCC launches first Equality, Diversity and Inclusion annual report. It says the actual web page on it. If you press it, it comes up with nothing. So perhaps Councillor Kirk can take that back to the County Council. It's interesting, if you want to read it, you can't read it because it's not letting you go into the County Council. And there's another issue, the next one, which is the Road Safety Week 2020, no need to speed. And it says, in a crash, 1 mile an hour can mean the difference between life and death. But we know that people will still regularly travel too fast. I thought that is quite apt when Councillor Finlay has raised the issue on the speed limit from Skegness Grain into Skegness to reduce the speed there. And yet the Road Safety Partnership are actually saying what we are trying to say, and yet they won't agree with us. Also, have on the other side of Borough Road towards Borough, past the Lyndhurst Garden Centre and the old Tritton Works there, they reduce the speed from 60 to 40. I just don't understand how they can say there's not enough development when we said, or when we asked for the speed reduction to be put in place. Yet on that section of road, there's only the garden centre there and one dwelling on one side of the road, yet a reduction can be met. Yes, there is a pedestrian crossing there. Yes, there is a roundabout, but further along or up the road, it's reduced to 40 miles an hour.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Kirk, would you like to come back?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, regarding the LCC Equality Diversity Report, the reason that doesn't work is they inadvertently sent round the link, which is an internal link for LCC members and members of staff. They didn't include the external link, so I'm more than happy to get the external link for you, Councillor Anderson, if you would like to read that internal documentation.
Yes, it's just not for me. It's
You know, I have absolutely no issues with that whatsoever. And as for, I think the Road Safety Week, people know very well my thoughts on the Lincolnshire Road Safety Partnership. The fact that when they decided to reduce the speed on the entire A52 from Skegness to Boston, every single parish objected. The data they used was at best manipulated for their own purposes, and it's seen no real reductions in accidents there. They often are used prior instead of doing proper road improvements. So yeah, I don't disagree with anything that Councillor Anderson has said. I think that section of road, we all know that section of road is crying out for a speed limit, and the fact that it doesn't meet their policy suggests to me that their policy needs updating.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. And I got sent a message earlier, actually, by a resident. They have put some 30 mile an hour speed placards up on the lamppost today. They sent some pictures through. So hopefully we will keep pushing forward with a restriction in that area. Do we have a note? Anybody to note this report, please? Thank the councillors for sending it.
propose we note this report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Butts. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All in favour, please show. Thank you. It's carried. Moving on to agenda item number 11, the budget and precept for 2021-2022. The report and appendices are attached. Please note that this will be a recorded vote, and I will call out your names, and if you could answer when we go to the vote, so that the town clerk and the deputy clerk can note these. Thank you.
Yeah. As council know, that we've been through the budget on numerous occasions now, and this is the final report that actually sets the budget and sets the precept, which will then be passed on to East Lindsey District Council for them to collect. The figures in the spreadsheet have remained, the budget figures have remained the same. You'll note from my report there has been a slight, very small reduction of 2 properties in the tax base. Now, given that normally we expect this to increase, there has been obviously building going on in Skegness. So I imagine this reduction is to do with the number of people who have moved on to benefits, and that because benefits is largely self-funded within the area, that means that the cost of that has the impact of reducing the number of properties which both our precept and also obviously the East Lindsey council tax charge and the Lincolnshire County Council and Police precept is spread amongst, making it slightly higher. Now, the impact is only a few hundredths of a percent on the actual change, because it's effectively 2 over 5,723 as a reduction. So it's a very, very small percentage change. It does alter that figure very slightly and make a few pence per year difference. But other than that, the figures remain the same. The contribution into the reserves and the estimates for that remain the same. And I'll be reporting to Management Committee as part of the government report next week on that, for reconfirming those figures. So the recommendation is to approve the proposed budget as set out in Appendix A. That's the main headings, because that gives us a little bit of flexibility in terms of the approval within each of those headings at the more detailed level. Approve the precepts and also within that Appendix A, approving the movements in reserves. Approve the precept of £551,284. And we should note the unusual change to the tax base and put this on the risk register, because this could be an issue next year. Because if our current situation, goes on through much of the coming year, then we might expect there to be more of a call on benefits, and that may have a further impact on that tax base. And also to approve that there are no changes to be made to existing fees and charges. So those are the recommendations. As I say, these are all the things that we've discussed previously, but this is now actually deciding. And as the Mayor said, in accordance with, because of the decision that is being made to charge residents, this is now to be a recorded vote.
Thank you, Town Clerk. Councillor Anderson, please.
Yeah, thank you. On the first point, I want to give notice I shan't be voting for or against, because when we were preparing the budget, I asked for 2 options regarding the Mayor's allowance, and obviously the vote was taken, and I, on principle, cannot agree to actually let a future mayor actually do civic occasions for absolutely not one penny in helping them achieve what they are doing. I think it is discriminatory for that to happen when we have policies on equality and diversity. That's the first point. The second point is what the town clerk has explained. I'm not having a go at people who are falling on hard times, but this is a government policy that I'm having a go on at. Is basically, as what the town clerk says, those people that are in receipt of benefits, the burden falls upon people that are paying council tax. I don't think that is actually fair. Again, that's discrimination. It's government policy to do this. There are lots of people in Skegness that are living in banded houses, in Band D, C, or whatever, who are have a lot of money into their properties, but are cash poor. And I don't think that is fair, putting the burden on people who cannot claim the allowances that other people can. And for that reason, I cannot vote, Mr. Mayor, because I think on those 2 points, you are discriminating people. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? Councillor Steve Kirk.
Can I just quickly get clarification of what Councillor Anderson was saying there? Because as far as I'm aware, the working have always paid for those who aren't working. That's where the money comes from in the system to support those people who are, for whatever reason, going through hard times, lost a job, whatever it may be. But that's always been paid for by the working man. Now, the money doesn't go on trees. We generate the money so that we can provide money to people who need it. So I can't see why that would be a reason not to vote for the budget, just because, a lot of people are really strapped for cash in Skegness. We know that, but we still all have to pay our bit. That's the way the system works.
Okay, thank you, Councillor.
Can I reply to that, Mr. Mayor, please?
Well, can I just bring Councillor Dankirk in, because you might want to answer. Councillor Dankirk, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last time I studied the Equality Act, having a funded mayoral reception was not one of the protected characteristics, and nor is actual financial matters a protected characteristic under the Equality Act. Just to state the intent for those that are viewing this publicly and live, the intent was not to stop a mayoral engagement, not at all. It was to actively promote the mayoral engagement. It is not fair for the public purse to fund a meal for a select few invited delegates. That's the point. People are strapped for cash. Our residents need every penny, and it is our duty as councillors to residents to ensure the cloth is cut accordingly. And that is exactly the function, not to stop the mayoral engagement. And I can't see how this is, well, it isn't discriminatory. So let's put a fact check on that straight away. It will still go ahead. But hopefully that adds clarity for those that perhaps weren't in the debate or are watching live. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Danny Brooks, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I tend to agree with Councillor Dankirk. The mayoral's reception is not to be finished or stopped, but I believe with us having the Tower Gardens, we could make it a bigger event if we so wished, where people came in. You could have an event on in the daytime in the park before the mayoral reception. I just think we've got an opportunity to debate all this. Once we get through COVID, we can re-debate it all. We've not needed a mayoral reception last year. We may not need one this year. It all depends. But then we can debate and set another one up that is fair to our residents.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson, would you like to come back?
Yeah, I think I need to come back here. I wasn't referring to the Equalities Act. I was referring to actually our policy within the town council. My point is, okay, is quite clear. If somebody wants to be mayor of Skegness and they are on benefits, or they are in receipt of a low wage and having to take time off to officiate in mayoral events, they would have to consider it very, very hard, hardly, because their work might not pay them for the days that they are attending mayoral engagements, and then to have £2,500 when you're doing 400. Well, I did over 400 engagements in 1 year, and asking me or that person on a low wage to subsidise that is not. It doesn't fit well with me. I think. Sorry.
Yeah, can I just come back on and clarify some points here? The amount that was withdrawn was not the mayoral allowance. That still is in existence and will still go forward into the new budget. It was for the mayoral reception, which was the cost of the dinner that is held after a new mayor comes into being.
Can I quickly come back, because I must make this point.
It was discussed that this should be perhaps a ticketed event where people pay to come, rather than it being funded by the precept payers. That was how it was left following the November meeting, and there's not been no councillors have formally raised any change to that at the December meeting, or indeed have not put forward any other proposals prior to tonight's meeting.
Thank you, Town Clerk. You can come back. I was just going to say the Town Clerk beat me to that, because the report we've got in front of us, we've all had this report and the discussions, and the only thing that's missing out of this, what I can read, is that the civic event was done away with. So we've had the report. We can come back, but what we're not going to do is keep going round and round in circles when we've worked hard on this and we've got to this figure.
Well,
I appreciate where we're going with the voting, but I'll allow you to come back, and then we need to go to the vote for this.
Thank you. I am entitled as an elected person to vote accordingly. If I want to abstain, I have that right. I have given you notice on my thoughts behind this, on the two reasons that I have. If people are trying to shut me up because of that, that's fine. That's not democratic. In my view, I think we are discriminating against people on low incomes or on benefits from becoming mayor of Skegness under what we have done. In previous years, there hasn't been a civic event. I know there hasn't been civic events because I know mayors that haven't done a civic event because they needed the money that was the whole allowance for being a mayor of Skegness, because they were not getting monies from benefits, plus they were not being paid if they were in work. And I just think it's so wrong. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Right, then we're going to go to the vote. As you said, we've got everything in front of you, all the details. I shall call out your name. That'll be for, against, or abstain.
Mayor, can I just check? Is this going on block?
Yeah. Are we happy to go on block? Is anybody willing to propose that we take this on block?
Yeah, I'll propose we take it on block.
Thank you, Councillor Blackburn. Do I second it, please?
Happy to second that. We've discussed it long and hard.
Okay, all in favour, please show. Thank you, that's carried. Okay, I shall read out your names, councillors. If you were for, against, or abstain, please, quite clearly, so the Town Clerk and the Deputy Clerk can make a note. Councillor Anderson.
Abstain.
Councillor Pete Barry. Councillor Barry.
For. Sorry.
Okay, Councillor Billy Brooks.
For, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Danny Brooks.
For.
Councillor Susan Blackburn.
For.
Councillor Trevor Burnham.
For.
Councillor Claxton is there. Councillor Cunnington, please.
4.
Councillor Dennis.
4.
Councillor Edgington.
4.
Councillor Finlay.
4.
Councillor Dan Kirk.
4, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Steve Kirk.
4.
Councillor George Saxon. Councillor George Saxon. I think he's trying to say 4, but we'll have to switch your microphone on, please. Councillor Saxon. No, we've lost him. Councillor Tony Ty.
4, Mr. Mayor.
And myself, Councillor Mark Dannett, 4. Seem to have lost Councillor Saxon, but I think he was saying 4, but we didn't actually get clarification on his voiceover. Some technical issues. Councillor Saxon, did you just want to come back and just vote again on that? Seems to be having problems. Can we unmute him, Town Clerk, please?
Hello,
Councillor Saxon. Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yes, I said we worked very hard on this. 4, definitely.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think we've called everybody's names out there. We've got all those recorded. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 12, the recommendations to council from Skegness Trading Company. To note and adopt otherwise the recommendation from the Skegness Trading Company to take forward the initial design and business planning for a heritage centre adjacent to the Tower Gardens Pavilion to include a heritage shop where the Jolly Fisherman brand items can be sold. The heritage centre would be used to preserve and display items of historic importance. The business planning should be sufficiently detailed to form the basis of a future funding bid should the opportunity arise. Councillor Steve Kirk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, the trading company has met several times now since its formation, and the stumbling block always comes a lot around the copyright and around trading and our ability to trade. Now, initially, we thought we could trade in a few items out of the cafe, but obviously that hasn't come to pass because, unfortunately, since its opening, the cafe has actually spent more time shut than open. Also, not of this council, but of a previous council, there was an aspiration within the business plan to actually have a heritage centre on the same site as the town hall. Those who had a good look around the mayor's parlour before it was closed down and before we moved ourselves out will realise actually as a council we hold a lot of heritage assets of Skegness. Not only the 2 jolly pictures we have, but also a lot of things that have been given to us over the years. So I think it's important that we have somewhere to display those. And also that would allow us to have a trading area for the Skegness Trading Company to sell some quality Skegness Jolly Fisherman merchandise. There's plenty around the town. I'm not saying there isn't, but it would be an opportunity for us to sell the original, genuine Jolly Fisherman branded merchandise on the copyrights that we own. So what the trading company would like the council to do is to consider our proposal, because only the council can do that, the trading company can't, and that would be to work up a business plan around a heritage centre to not only display our heritage artefacts, a museum for Skegness, but also as a trading area for the trading company to sell its quality branded Jolly Fisherman merchandise. So that's what we'd like the council to do, but obviously it's for the council to debate and approve or otherwise our request. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kirk. Councillor Billy Brooks.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think selling Jolly Fisherman merchandise, or it's a fantastic idea. I'm surprised it's not been done sooner because it could be a nice little way to make a bit of money, and people want to buy it. I'd buy a official Jolly Fisherman merchandise the same as I'd buy a Man United football shirt. So yeah, fantastic idea.
Councillor Richard Cunnington, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just being a bit thoughtful here, a bit mindful. We've come across this obstacle already, and there's been a lot of debate around certain topics. I'm more than happy to think about merchandise and a heritage centre and somewhere, but we also need to look at the income this would generate against the cost it would cost us to actually employ somebody to look after the centre, run it, and the wages from actually being in there selling this stuff. I just think we need to be mindful as to that cost. It's like the cafe. It was decided on in previous councils that the cafe would be open and run by a council member of staff. Unfortunately, the wages and things obviously are such a cost. It needs to make such a high profit to actually make any money, and we're passing that cost on to our residents. And I would hate to see a heritage souvenir shop, however we word this, and the cost of running that being passed on to our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson, please.
I agree with Councillor Cunnington. We must make sure that the residents actually not subsidise this. I think somebody's not muted, Mr. Mayor, it's echoing.
Right. I think Councillor Saxon, you've still got your microphone on, I think.
I was.
Can't understand a word of that.
I can't hear anybody now, Mr. Mayor.
No. Can you turn your microphone off, Councillor Saxon, please? Maybe the town clerk can assist. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Anderson.
That's okay. Yeah, yeah, I agree with Councillor Cunnington. We must make sure, or the trading company, if this is approved, must make sure that the ratepayer doesn't actually subsidise these gifts, etc., like Councillor Kirk was suggesting. In answer to Councillor Brooks Jr., these items have been sold by the previous town council many years ago, because I've got souvenirs of Jolly Fisherman, and also by East Lindsey District Council in the tourist centre. So yes, they were popular, and I think we need to carry on doing that, and I agree with Councillor Kirk. With regards to his Man United football shirt, well, I too like football, and I too support West Ham United, so the challenge will be there between him and I regarding the football front. Thank you.
Good. Being as we're not talking about Manchester or West Ham at this moment in time, and Skegness is my priority, so can we move on to Councillor Kirk, please? Dan Kirk.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Mayor. This is a point in principle. You know, we're looking at the recommendations from the committee, and I'm happy to support this. Thrashing out these key important details is not for this meeting. You know, it's as presented in front of us to design a business plan. The business plan will make sure that it can be appropriately budgeted, etc., etc. So I would happily propose that we adopt the recommendations for the trading company group. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? So we better propose that we adopt these.
I would second everything that Dan said. I mean, it'll be thrashed out. All they're asking us to vote on is whether we go ahead with the actual idea.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Blackburn. Councillor Steve Kirk, please.
Right, well, I'm making an assumption here that the council in due course will vote on this. If they do, question to the town clerk and the deputy town clerk, for that matter, do we have capacity in the team to do this initial design and business planning, or will it be something external, and will there be a cost to involve if we go external?
Town clerk,
at the moment, at this moment in time, I would suggest that because we're not occupying the offices, because we're not getting people through the door, we're not doing many of the normal things that we do. There's probably some capacity now. If in future months things change and we get back to normality, then the capacity will then reduce again. And but if we look at what's being asked for, I think at this stage, it would be let's do a very outline plan of what could be done, bring that back to council. Council has a look at it, see whether it's something that it wants to do and gives it some shape and direction. I think that could be done relatively quickly. At that point, if it looks as if it could be, you know, a thing to move forward with, then council would have to start to think, well, where would it get the funding to actually develop such a scheme? And I think that might be where council starts to look at tranches of money. Maybe the first tranche might be to develop, to take that initial business plan with the council's ideas in it and develop that into something which then could form the basis of a funding, you know, a very detailed funding bid. That might, the funding tends to come in tranches where you start with a, you know, an outside idea, an outline idea, and then develop it over a period of time. We've seen that happen before, and we could be looking at heritage funding. We've already got some connections with Heritage because they have supported the preservation of the Jolly Fisherman paintings. So this could then be another step towards you know, involving them in a more complex and bigger project. But going back to your original question, I think if we do something quickly and now, we can get something back to council, and then we'll have to see how it goes and see how the situation is with COVID and whether we're getting back to normal and the normal sort of amounts of work that are coming through the office.
Thank you, Town Clerk. Councillor Kirk, did that answer your questions for you?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we've had Dan Kirk propose this and Councillor Blackburn seconded. All in favour, please show. Okay. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 13, Lincolnshire Schools Admission Policy Consultation attached. The details are how to respond. Consultations. Move
it be noted.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Dankirk.
I think this needs a bit of debate. I think it's quite, well, unfortunate actually that DRET is wanting to reduce the service in the area, despite that being one of the key terms of the academisation from local authority grammar school through to now a privately owned company running it. I think to note it is kind of skirting it off a bit too much. I think we should debate this, and I'm confident that many councillors have already completed the survey independently. I was just wondering if at all the council could add some weight and we could debate this and maybe put in a council response.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson.
Why I said note it, Mr. Mayor, as Councillor Kirk knows, or Junior knows, these academies are private. They're private businesses. They are run and they have the way they operate, in my understanding, the only people that can hold them to account is the Department of Education. So, you know, at the end of the day, we can hold our hands up in the air, we can huff and we can puff, okay, but we've got no control of them. We don't even have local governors, school governors on these academies anymore. They are appointed by the academies wherever from, not local people, not parent governors or whatever. So we have no control locally over them. That's why I said it's noted, because the only people that can hold them to account is our MP and probably the Department of Education. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Anderson. So you've got proposed that we note these. Councillor Billy Brooks, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I quite agree with Councillor Dan Kirk. I think we need to let them know that we're not happy about this, and obviously there's not much we can do, but I think it's worth them knowing our thoughts on it, and that, you know, 12 pupils are going to have to find somewhere else.
Thank you. Councillor Steve Kirk, please.
Yeah, we also have very little control of what the NHS do, but this council still holds their feet to the fire when they think we believe they're letting our town down. So I think it's only quite right and proper that if we think that there's 12 people there who will not get the opportunity of a grammar school education who otherwise would done, well, that's certainly disadvantaging our children. So I think we should be writing to the David Ross Educational Trust and expressing our grave concern that they're reducing their numbers, rather than what they should be doing is on the contrary, that they should be increasing numbers and giving more residents of Skegness children that opportunity.
Thank you. Councillor Dan Kirk, please.
Just to help with a bit of context as well, the Skegness Grammar School still is highly regarded as a fantastic boarding school for international students. What I'm quite concerned is how all of a sudden the school has gone from this international status down, and they're perhaps struggling to fill places in their boarding facilities. And a grammar school education is right for lots of children. I did my training in a grammar school, and also did my training in a selective secondary education system, and I can see that there are arguments for both sides of the debate. What I'm concerned is that this is a significant reduction, because this is an admission for 1 year. That's going to escalate for 5 years. So that's a significant pupil reduction for what is, still the same site. How all of a sudden is it not able to cater for that, unless they feel that they're struggling to fill the places, which I can't imagine is the case. So, yeah, I think the council should strongly object to a reduction in service, because this is clearly what it is. I don't know how it stands with the legalities. I'm not a lawyer, but when it was academized, they would have some sort of ruling there. That's not something that we can put into the argument. That's down to the lawyers at Lincolnshire County Council to debate. But ultimately, we know as councillors that standards in education are a significant challenge. I'm not going to say that it's improved or declined, but we all know deep down the answer to that. And for us to just accept 12 places in the admission, that's 12 places 1 year, turns to 24. All of a sudden you've lost 32 potential students from gaining a grammar school education that they perhaps should otherwise have deserved. And I think that's absolutely out of order, and we should strongly object to that, and even ask for some clarity as to the why that they believe that's the case. So I think what we should do, I'm going to put a proposal together here, is that we as a council complete the survey, write a letter to David Ross Education Trust asking them to justify their reasonings to the town council, and perhaps even inviting them to share that opinion with the council, or that judgment, because they may have some perfectly justified arguments backed with data that we as community leaders could then disseminate to residents that might be disgruntled about this. But yeah, we should definitely reply. I'd like to propose that the clerk write a letter, if that's okay, to asking for justifications and reasoning behind this drop in service, and potentially inviting them to discuss that if possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dunkirk. Yeah, just on the percentage side, it's 9%, so it's quite a drastic drop, really. It's just over 9%. Councillor Danny Brooks, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I totally agree with the speakers that have said we should write to David Ross, but I think we should write to our MP and get him involved as well. when they brought academies in, I was dead against them. I said that eventually they'll become private schools where, you know, they drop the numbers of people that are in them, and only the richer people can afford them, which seems to be the way that they're gradually going. 132 down to 120 this year, and then but you lose those 12 every year. But I bet they will bring it down again, and then they'll bring it down again, and eventually we'll be down to about 50 students. So they don't have to pay the teachers probably and the teaching assistants. I think it's outrageous that a private company runs the schools, the public schools. I've always thought that it's time that, you know, they kept to their word and educated our students in Skegness. We need more places in our schools, not less. The Richmond School are having to put porter cabins in to accommodate the children that we've got. And here we go, the grammar school are saying, well, we don't actually need any more. We've got enough. I think it's outrageous, and he needs telling that it's outrageous, and so does our MP. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Danny Brooks, are you seconding? I'm going to bring some more speakers in, but are you seconding Councillor Dan Kirk for his proposal that we write and invite a letter?
Yeah, as long as he adds the MP onto it as well, I'm quite happy to second that.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Councillor Tony Tye, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I totally concur with what Councillor Kirk says. He's absolutely right. We've really got to write in and tell them that we're not happy with the situation. I mean, as Councillor Danny said there, that in 2 years' time we could be down to 50 or 60 students. Not good enough. Get the MP involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tye. Councillor Sid Dennis, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think a question we should be asking before we start attacking everything is just asking the reasons why the numbers are being cut. I'd be interested to know, because I would have thought the more pupils, the more income. So I don't quite get the reasoning. I think the prudent question would be to ask the reasoning behind their decisions, because looking at the paper, they look as though they're reducing right across the board, and I would be interested to know the criteria and their evidence for doing what they were doing. I was more interested in that, I think. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mark Anderson.
Yeah, Councillor Dennis hit it the nail on the head when he said what he said. There is a reason why, and why I said it's noted. I noted because okay, if we want to write a letter, I've got no problems in writing a letter to the Academy and also to our MP, but there is a reason behind this. I will be dead against if the 12 is from Skegness area, the catchment area for the grammar school. I would be concerned. If it's the borders, like Councillor Dan Kirk is suggesting, then I wouldn't care as much, because they come outside the catchment area of Skegness. I'm here sitting as a Skegness councillor, looking at the needs of our children here in Skegness, rather than people from afar who are attending a boarding school, who are paying for the education. But I agree with Councillor Dennis, there has to be a reason surrounding this, and I think we need to write and find out. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Steve Kirk. I've seen you, Councillor Saxon. I'll bring you in after Councillor Kirk.
Yeah, if the proposer and seconder wouldn't mind, I would like to take this one step further. I've got no evidence, but obviously when you publish your PAN number, that's the number of students you intend to take in and intake in that year. That doesn't reduce the capacity of your school. Let's say, for example, you have a school that's doing remarkably well on the international scene, and learners are paying you £15,000 a year, and you are doing okay at £4,000 a year from people who live in the area that are paid for by the government. Which ones are you going to take? I'm not suggesting that is what's happening here, but it could be a reason for wanting to reduce the number of learners they take from this area and increase the number of international. The point I'd like to make, though, is the fact that we know education, skills and training on the East Coast are not great. We know we have a lot of young people leaving school without the very best of educations, and we know we have a lot of adults in our town with no qualifications at all. So therefore, I actually think this is something worthy of the Secretary of State for Education to have some input into. Surely they should be pumping resources into education on the coast, not taking them away. We know what's happening with the Towns Fund and the chance of getting an FE college here, but we're talking at the 11 to 16-year-olds. This is where it's going to get hit most. There's no point in us working hard as a council and with our district and county colleagues to bring FE provision in if the schooling up to 16 isn't up to scratch. So I would suggest, if they don't mind, that we actually write to, I think it's somebody correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's Gavin Williamson at the moment, who's Secretary of State for Education, writing and suggesting that he actually look into this and sees why our provision is going down rather than up. Our area is growing. The number of young people we have coming through will be growing. So therefore, so should our allocated spaces not be reducing.
Thank you, Councillor Kirk. Just before I bring the proposer and seconder back in, can we have Councillor Saxon, please?
Yes.
Can you? You'll have to. Might have to, Councillor Saxon. You might have to turn your video off. We can't hear you. Your internet's breaking up. You might need to turn the video.
Is that better now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Hang on a second. Councillor Dennis, you've got your microphone on. Sorry. We're getting feedback. Thank you. Councillor Saxon.
Because quite right. There's a lot more money in Wainfleet in the residential things. But the other argument is when they cut figures like this is less students, better teachers, less students, they get more attention, and so they get a better education. That's their thing, you know, and they leave less teachers. So I mean that's the thing that will come back from David. That's David Ross. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dankirk.
Thank you. Yeah, interesting debate. And Councillor Dennis was reiterating my point to invite them to explain their rationale. I think it's a nice idea that Councillor Saxon brought to the table in the fact that they want to reduce the class number sizes. I very much doubt that they're going to go for anything lower than the maximum stated by the teaching unions. They are an organisation that has a series of very high overheads, and they need to ensure that they remained opened. That's just one observation. I'm happy to accept the amendment, and I'm confident that my seconder will concur with this to also get some clarity from the Secretary of State to investigate this. Our birth rate is up. Primary school provision and places is high. I'd like to see the facts, what's allowing them to make that decision. If it's because the organisation is not sustainable, funding reasons for X number of reasons, then I'm sorry, they shouldn't be wasting money on. So, hang on, I'll stop that. Yeah, they shouldn't be wasting money. They should be cutting their cloth accordingly. That is the role of a teaching organisation. You get given an annual budget, and you must spend that budget, not carry it over or anything like that. So yeah. I'm happy to accept that, and I'm confident that my seconder, Danny Brooks, will reiterate that.
Councillor Brooks?
Mayor, just before it's seconded, could I make a suggestion that perhaps it's done in 2 stages? That the initial stage is to get answer directly from the schools in terms of why they've cut the numbers, because if we're writing to the Secretary of State and the local MP, then we want to make sure that it isn't simply that the numbers in the yearly cohort for next year have dropped, and that they're reducing the numbers so that they can reduce staffing levels, which is done, you know, as we know now, teachers are often employed on annual contracts rather than permanent contracts, and it's often the way in which budgets are managed. I haven't seen the information as to why, and it might be worth getting that first, and then being armed with that information, it would make writing to the MP and the Secretary of State easier, and it would be evidence-based rather than just a speculative letter that, you know, the numbers have gone down. Is it because this, and this, when we don't actually know?
Would you like to come back, Dan Kirk, please?
That's a great point, Mr. Lana. I quite agree. I think we should make a time limit associated with this, and I do think we should be CCing this letter into our MP, giving the MP a courtesy copy without a shadow of a doubt. But yeah, I'd like to set a reasonable time in which to await a response. If we don't receive a response, then a letter to the Secretary of State can acknowledge the fact that we haven't received a response. So I'd like to set a time period of 14 days from delivery to get some sort of response. And if we don't receive anything within 14 days, then we can send that fact to the MP, followed by the Secretary of State, so that we can get a response from alternative channels, or perhaps even involving Lincolnshire County Council, because at the end of the day, they are responsible as the local authority responsible for education. So there's got to be some rationale from them. But yeah, that sounds like a good logical point of call. And I'm confident that, well, hopefully, Councillor Brooks will second that.
Thank you. Councillor Danny Brooks, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My only concern with that strategy is the consultation ends on the 30th of January. Now, if David Ross's trust decide to hold on to our letter till the 30th of January and then say, well, actually, it's too late. We've consulted, we're doing it. So I think, as Councillor Dan Kirk said, I think we need a time limit on this. If on the 30th of January this year, David Ross turn around and say, well, that's it, we've consulted, it's too late. What would we do then? So I think we do need to CC our MP in it. And I think we do need to find out the facts. However, we need to find out the facts fast, because otherwise the consultation's over, it's game over, it's done. So that is my only worry. But I definitely second adding what Councillor Steve Kirk said. And Councillor Dennis, yes, we do need to find out why, but we do need to find out quicker than what we've got. 15 days.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mark Anderson, please.
Don't disagree what Councillor Brooks was saying. Timescale is tight. So what we need to do in the first instance is to object to it and then find out the reasons why.
Thank you. Councillor Saxon, can you turn your microphone off, please? Councillor Billy Brooks, please.
I was just going to say exactly the same as Councillor Anderson, because even if we did find out why, and before the 30th of January, we've got to wait till the next meeting to discuss it. So I think I quite agree. We need to object and do as been stated.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dan Kirk, have you put your hand back?
Yes, I did. I just wanted to clarify again, just to summarise exactly what it is that we're voting for. So my original proposal was that the council objects for us to write. Steve Lana's suggestion was to request for the facts and the rationale behind that decision. What's the intent and how's it going to impact a full Ofsted analysis, perhaps? And to give an associated deadline with that. We don't necessarily need to tell them they've got a deadline, but if we don't receive a response by the 30th or whatever date the clerk decides, then we write to Secretary of State and MP stating that we want this investigating because it's not acceptable. This date is purely for consultation, just to, for Councillor Brooks. Yes, they've got an end date on the consultation. That doesn't mean they are making the decision on the 30th, and it doesn't mean that that decision can't be overturned by the powers that be. This is purely their activity to state, oh, well, nobody really seemed to care about it because we only got 3 responses. I believe that's the intent as to this consultation. So yeah, that hopefully that's cleared it up. We are objecting as a council. We are to complete the report as complete the consultation as individuals. We are to write to DRET for clarification of the rationale behind the decision, whilst CCing in our Member of Parliament. If we don't receive a response or a satisfactory response by the 30th or whatever date the clerk chooses, then we should then back it up with another letter asking for the Secretary of State and our Member of Parliament to challenge this with the powers that be. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Steve Kirk. Oh, did you want to speak, Councillor Steve Kirk? Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay, thank you. I think it's been covered off. I would still write to everybody straight away. I take on board what the town clerk is saying, but if our letter is about our town and about how the education system repeatedly lets down the young people of this town, it's irrelevant what reasons they give. You know, so there is still an argument there. So it all depends on the shape of the letter we send. If the shape of the letter goes, we just object to losing these 12 places, then I'm quite happy with the proposal as it is. But if we were going to say more about how the government should be investing more in our schools, not allowing these private companies to take things away from our schools, then I still think a letter should go to the Secretary of State to that end.
Would you like to come back, Dan Kirk, please?
I can't see it doing any harm, and there's nothing to stop us offering a subsequent follow-up letter if facts do arise that we wish to challenge further. I can't see it doing any harm. I believe that it needs to be worded in that sort of nature anyway, to set the scene clearly for whoever is reading it that might not be familiar with the social economical factors that Skegness has problems with. So absolutely it needs to be a well-worded, structured letter stating the plight of education in coastal areas in Skegness, and making them aware that this is occurring. And if we don't receive a response, and a backup letter stating, you know, subsequent to our previous letter, we've received information, blah, blah, blah. We believe this not to be acceptable because, or whatever it may be. So we can always follow up with a fact letter after.
Thank you. Councillor Steve Kirk, did you want to come back?
Yeah, if I may, I'm just conscious of what I've said. I'd just like to emphasise for anybody who is listening to this live that we do have some excellent teachers, some excellent schools doing some excellent work with our young people. We're just trying to make it better. We're not detracting from the work that they're doing.
Okay, thank you. Town Clerk, have we got all the information you require? What we're going to be voting on?
It seems that there's almost two parts to the letter then. There's the letter which is more about long-term ongoing funding and commitment to the education system in Skegness, which clearly is more for those that are involved in policy at a high level, whether that be Lincolnshire County Council from education authority point of view, or government in relation to national policies and those that affect the academies. And then I think there is what appears to be a separate thing, which is about these 12 places. We need to get to the bottom of why they've decided to reduce it. As I say, it may be a simple reason to do with the cohort in the coming years, and that may be revised again in future years, or it may be due to funding or other issues that have been debated tonight, and we need to find that out. But I will word something which tries to draw those two things together and make sure it goes to the organisations identified.
Thank you, Town Clerk. Okay, so if we'd like, we've got a proposer and a seconder. You've all heard what we've just said. So all in favour, please show. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 14, the Investment Strategy 2021, which is attached to approve or otherwise the reviewed policy.
This is a change to, or minor changes to an existing policy on investment. I've highlighted those changes within the report. You can see it on the, with the things out and replacements and underlining. Essentially, major changes are to do with dates and committees and bits and pieces like that, just to make it make sense within the organisation, but also acknowledging the fact that we're entering a sort of an economic uncertain period of time with both COVID and obviously Brexit. What's that going to do to things like the Bank of England rates? Principles behind the strategy are maintaining our liquidity so that we can move money around to deal with issues as and when it is required, so not tying those into long-term investments, but also having security over the money as well. So going with the sort of well-known high street banks, which have reasonable assessments and ratings from the from those that carry out those ratings.
Thank you. Councillor Dankirk, please. Councillor Dankirk.
It'd help if I unmuted my microphone, wouldn't it? I'd like to propose that we adopt the policy, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cunnington.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just got some concerns within the policy. Obviously, we're all, as councillors, responsible for the finances of the council and for looking after the money of our residents. I feel that we have enough meetings now. We have 2 meetings per month, which any sort of financial responsibilities like this could be tagged into. I see there's a bit that, well, obviously, we're giving delegated powers to the clerk to move funds as and when needed, but I feel that there should be enough notice from the clerk. He should be confident enough and capable enough to be able to provide this to us prior to having to making the decision off his own back. And I think council should actually decide prior to moving it, where moving it, how and why, and all the other bits and pieces. So I'd just like to remove the delegated powers for that, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dankirk.
I left my hand up by mistake. Apologies.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else wishing to say anything? Councillor Steve Kirk, please.
Yeah, just to question the logic for Councillor Cunnington. Our town clerk is our responsible financial officer. He is there to safeguard the money that we've collected from the residents of Skegness and to do the right thing by us. That's part of his job role. I don't know how we would be in a better position to make a decision than he would with the skills and training that he's had.
Thank you. Councillor Dennis, please. Sorry, Town Clerk, did you wish to say anything?
I was just going to come back and say the whole purpose of the strategy is that it sets out the framework within which I work. So all that the delegated authority allows is if there's a surplus of money in the current account, it allows me above, when it reaches a certain limit, to move it into an investment account. And if it falls again below that limit, I move it back. That's the only delegated authority that it actually gives me. And if I have to wait 2 weeks or more to move money around, if there was, for instance, a situation where we had to pay a large amount of bills, and thinking back, you know, if we think back to the project that we've just gone through, I wouldn't have been able to pay them within the context of the contract that we were in. So it's just a framework. Council is completely in control, and in fact, it's setting those limits within this strategy, and essentially saying when we get to this point, you need to move money from here to here, and the delegated authority is just allowing me to actually move that money.
Thank you. Councillor Dennis, please. First, can I just bring Councillor Dennis in, Councillor Cunnington, before we go back? Councillor Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to ask Councillor Cunnington his thought process for this, please.
Thank you. Councillor Cunnington, please.
Yeah, I was just thinking, obviously, surely there's more than one option of moving the money and whether it's actually right to move it at that point. There's nothing behind it, but if there's more than one option of moving the money or something like that, surely we should be aware and look at the options we've got rather than just saying it's going to go from that account to that account. If there's more options or whatever, it's just having that voice within that decision.
Councillor Dennis, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Councillor Cunnington, I think you can't run a council by committee for these decisions that need to be moved within 24 hours. It just makes it that cumbersome. It also, I think, maybe a little bit casts aspersions on the integrity of the town clerk, and I'm a bit concerned about that.
Councillor Danny Brooks, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think he's casting aspersions on the town clerk. I don't think he had them intentions at all. The only thing that I think probably he would be right on is if we were a super rich council, but unfortunately we're not. We can't afford to go for these long-term investments anyway. We haven't got the money for that. If we had, that would be a different situation. What Councillor Dennis has got to remember is these councillors are only just learning, and they're trying to find out every last detail they can so that they know. I don't think he's trying to cast aspersions on the clerk, as I don't think anybody would do. But no, I can see why he's asking the questions, and I believe that any councillor should be able to ask a question without anybody else slating them and trying to make out that they're a bit thick.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. Councillor Mark Allison, please.
Yeah, I've listened to the debate, and I don't think this is a slur on our town clerk. I think it's a valid question asked by Councillor Cunnington. I think what he's looking at is long-term investment, is what Councillor Brooks has suggested, in stocks and shares. But markets go up and down, and just quick decisions have to be made, and and things like that. But as what Councillor Brooks said, we're a small town council. The clerk needs money to move around money quickly, to pay bills, basically. We don't have a lot of money invested, unlike the county council, which has various committees that what Councillor Cunnington has said, they actually do. So he's not wrong in what he says. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Dennis, would you like to come back?
I'd like to come back on Councillor Brooks. I wasn't attacking anybody, Councillor Brooks. I was just passing an opinion. Councillor Cunnington can stand up for himself. He doesn't need you chipping in. The way it looked to me was he was casting aspersions, or that's the way it could be seen for people who are listening to this live, because that's the way I felt it was happening. But I'm not having a go at him. I'm just passing a comment. Yes, we have got a lot of new councillors on, but we're nearly 2 years in now, so a lot should be learned. And I seriously wasn't trying to cast any aspersions, but I can't sit here and have that feeling that people's integrity has been questioned. I don't think that would be right, and so I've spoken up. And if that causes anybody offence, I don't mean to cause anybody offence. And if I have done to Councillor Cunnington, I apologise. But what I will say, as I said before, you can't run it by committee. So let's get a life here. All right.
Thank you. I think we've got one, because we're all here talking about it, and I think the question should be asked. I do feel that we should ask questions, and it's the only way we learn. We all learn on a daily basis, and I appreciate where everybody's coming from, but I don't think there's any attack. But we can look at things differently over the screen.
Mayor, can I just quickly? I'll just quickly. Perhaps I should have done this at the beginning. Just explain what this is about. The strategy is council setting out how it wants its money to be managed. The delegated authority is simply giving me the authority to manage it in the way that council has said it wants it to be managed. Now, if council wants to change the way in which money is managed, it can do so anytime by changing this investment strategy. Now, as has been said, we're not a super rich council, so we've got a limited amount of money. Each April and September, money arrives via the precept. What we do is we look at how much money do we need to pay our bills across the year. We don't want to be moving money all of the time, because it takes time to do that, and that takes officer time, and that obviously has a cost to it. So we have to make decisions about, is now a sensible time to move it? Okay, we'll move it from here to here. Occasionally, we will get a big bill come in, and we might think, right, we haven't got enough in the current account to pay for that, so we need to move some of it back from the investment account back into the current account. Now, at this moment in time, the rates of interest that we're getting on the investment account are so low anyway that it makes no difference. So I'm not going to be taking very much action at the moment. Most of it is going to sit in the current account, because I know that we will spend it during the course of the year, and we're talking about, you know, a few pounds across the year. But if those interest rates were to go up, then it might make sense to actually move money back into the interest earning account when we're not using it. And this strategy simply sets out, this is what council is instructing me to do. So it is the instructions to me as the responsible finance officer. This is how you want me to manage the money on your behalf. So it's not the sort of thing that we would normally do on a, you know, every couple of weeks. So I wouldn't be writing a report, you know, and saying, oh, can I move this money from here to here? One, that would take a huge amount of my time, which wouldn't be worthwhile. And it would also take up your time when you've already given the instruction overall as to how you want it to be done. So, yeah, I don't take it as a, you know, casting any aspersions on me. And I absolutely understand that questions need to be asked in order that there is a full understanding about these papers I write. So it was a valid question, but what I'm saying is, this is the instruction that you're giving me as to how you want to manage the money.
Thank you, Town Clerk. Councillor Anderson, did you leave your hand up from last time, or did you want to come back in?
No, I left it up, sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Steve Kirk, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, the way interest rates are predicted to go, Mr. Mayor, I think there's a significant chance we won't be moving any money into savings when interest rates go negative. It actually costs us money to do that. So I'm sure the town clerk will be as prudent as he always is. I don't know whether this has been proposed. If it has, I'm seconding it. And if it hasn't, I'm proposing it. I'd like to move on, please, Mr. Mayor, if we could.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Brooks, Danny Brooks, did you want to come back in? Your hand
yeah, I'll just come back in, if I could do, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't having a go at Councillor Dennis. I was just explaining what I thought the situation was, and he's right to, if he feels that somebody is casting aspersions, he is dead right to have his say. I think Councillor Dan Kirk proposed it, and I believe that's what happened.
Okay, Councillor Dan Kirk proposed it. Councillor Steve Kirk seconded it. So all in favour, please show. Thank you. Agenda item number 15, to appoint members to the Honours Working Group, to appoint a maximum of 5 members to the Honours Working Group, and set a date for a meeting in February 2021. Last meeting took place on the 22nd of February 2018 with Councillors Sid Dennis in the chair, and Councillor Dick Edgington and Trevor Burnham present.
I'd like to move those 3, Mr. Mayor, if possible, and any other councillor that wants to go on it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Danny Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'd like to ask those 3 if they'd like to stay on it, and as Councillor Anderson said, see if anybody else would like to go on it.
Thank you. Councillor Billy Brooks.
I would just like to state my interest in joining the committee if possible, please.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Brooks. Councillor Trevor Vernon, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd be honoured if I could stay on the honours list, please, on the committee.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sid Dennis, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'll be pleased to some more councillors come on. I don't know how many we think we need on it, but I would certainly be interested in some of the new councillors coming on it. I think that would be good and it'd be interesting for them. But I also think we do need a presence of older councillors as well, so then we get a balance.
Thank you. Councillor Edgington.
Yes.
You've muted your microphone, Councillor Edgington.
Yes, I'm happy to continue if the council are happy with that on this committee.
Okay,
working group.
Thank you. Councillor Adrian Finlay, please.
Yeah, I'd like to join the committee if it's possible, and you'll have me on board. I'd be more than happy to join it.
Thank you. Councillor Steve Kirk, whose hand's disappeared. Councillor Billy Brooks, have you left your hand up? Did you want to come back? So I think we've got 3 new members. No, Councillor Burnham was already on there. So we've got Councillor Billy Brooks and Councillor Adrian Finlay that would wish to be added.
Yeah, I'll move all the named councillors. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Danny Brooks. You've muted your microphone, Councillor Brooks.
Double clicked. Yeah, I'd like to second Councillor Anderson. So we have Councillor Dennis, Councillor Edgington. Councillor Edgington, obviously, he's got a vast number of years, so he knows the town well. As Councillor Dennis has not got so many, but yeah, I think that 5 would be very good. Councillor Dennis, Councillor Edgington, Councillor Burnham, Brooks, and Finlay. I didn't see if anybody else wanted to go on, but I will second Councillor Anderson.
I think we got all of those, and we've got the grandfather of the house. He's still with us. So we could all go over the vote then, please. That we had those new members and keep the existing ones. Me included. Thank you very much, Karen. Agenda item number 16, the Town Clerk's report, which is attached. To note, the Town Clerk's report on various issues relating to the Council's operations under the current lockdown. Town Clerk, please.
Mayor, based on the current lockdown and certainly these messages that seem to be coming out around the Prime Minister's announcement just over a week ago, I think it's very likely that the building, the Town Gardens Pavilion building, will remain closed until the end of March. Clearly, we're hoping that we'll be in a position to open the cafe again from Easter, but we'll have to take a view on that closer to the time. And I think it depends on how the numbers are doing, whether they're down to any sort of reasonable level by then. Only, hope that that's the case. We're still working with one member of staff going into the pavilion each day to do the basic checks that we need to and to pick up the post. Other than that, we're working at home, and that seems to be working relatively well. We've got access to phones and we're able to work as well as we under those circumstances. The grounds team, we've been hit by a bit of sickness in the grounds team, and this has coincided with a very difficult period. We're getting far more funerals than we were getting earlier on in the year now, and certainly I don't know the detail of whether these are all COVID related. I suspect that some of them are, but we haven't got that detail at this moment in time. We need to, as the burial authority, we need to be able to respond to the demands placed on us by the funeral directors. And so in order to cover the sickness, I've had to ask a part-time member of staff to increase their hours until the end of March in order to cover the additional work that's being paused. And obviously we've lost sort of more hours than that through sickness. So that there will be a cost associated with that, but of course we do get a fee income from the digging of graves. So I'm hoping that over the course of that period of time that the additional costs will be met by the fees that we get in relation to the grave digging. The other thing to report, and I'll be reporting more on this to management next week, is that we're now a year on from when the pavilion came over to us at the end of the contract, and we're coming to the end of the defects period. And as part of that, there will be a final walk round by the clerk of works who oversaw the build, and there will be a list of any final defects for the contractor to complete prior to that defects period being signed off. Now, clearly, major structural issues are covered by warranty, but we're talking, in terms of general defects, we're talking about the sort of equipment, so things like heating and lighting and doors and windows, that type of stuff, by a 12-month defect period. So once we've gone through that process and we get to a point where we have a final list to be remedied and defects will be done within a certain period of time, dealt with within a certain period of time by the contractor, I will then come back to council or management as the closest committee and report back on the outcome. So the recommendation to this is to note and support the approach taken in respect of the lockdown, note and approve the temporary increase in hours to cover long-term sickness, and also to note the defects period update. Thank you.
Thank you, Town Clerk. And yeah, we're in difficult times at this moment in time, and we must offer these services, so I fully support it. Councillor Anderson, would you like to say, you've got your hand up, would you like to speak?
Yeah, before I move the recommendations, a couple of questions. Yes, no problems with the snagging list that the Town Clerk has said has to be done. Is the snagging list coming to management committee so we can actually see the defects, or is it delegated to the Town Clerk just to do it? And the second point is, are we getting any grant from East Lindsey District Council? I'm talking about government grant regarding the cafe.
Thank you, Town Clerk.
In terms of the defects process is laid out in our contract with the contractor. So the actual process itself can't at this stage be influenced by council or changed. What I will be doing is bringing back a list of defects that have been agreed. They will be agreed with the clerk of works, who's got the technical knowledge to actually, you know, put that in front of us. I mean, we are aware of some defects. There have been some defects that have been repaired during the course of the year anyway. It's not everything being left till the you know, the end of the period. So there will be a few things that I'm aware of that will need to be rectified. For example, there's some slight lifting of some of the flashing on the roof that needs to be remedied. There's some seals on some of the windows that need to be re-fixed. But as I say, the process will be that the clerk of work comes round, the original architect who designed the building will come round and make sure that everything is in accordance with the original design. and if there are any issues with that, I will bring that back. But there isn't really, we can't not sign it off with the defects. We could only sign it off if the contractor refused to remedy real defects that have been identified. In terms of the grant, Councillor Anderson, we have applied for, and we have been getting the tier grant, which is about £2,000 per payment, and that's been coming in through up until the end of December. There is now a new arrangement, and we've automatically been moved forward into that. So we are expecting payments to continue through until the end of March for that. So that will cover some of the costs of running the building while it's empty, and include some of the cafe costs, obviously, in that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Danny Brooks, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question, if I could, Steve. It's regarding not the grants for the cafe, but the letter that we received from the Secretary of State, Robert Jenrick MP. I wondered if you'd had anything back on that. I emailed both our MP and Robert Jenrick MP in November, and I did not receive a reply from either. So I was a little bit disappointed, as he'd said our all town councils and parish councils had held the fight and had received money, and I just wondered if we'd had any other word your end.
I've had nothing from the Secretary of State or from the MP in relation to that went to the Secretary of State. It is disappointing, because I believe that although we are now getting monies through for the current lockdown period, there should have been, in my opinion, monies that should have come through for the original lockdown, which we've not had. And I think that was certainly seemed to be the intention behind the Secretary of State's letter. It seems to have been interpreted differently, though, by some local authorities responsible for allocating that money.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Could I come back, Mr. Mayor?
Please do.
Yeah, I'm disappointed as well, Steve. I think the work you've done, and to be not rewarded, as Robert Jenrick said that the town council would be, I think is a bit outrageous, really. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Saxon. Councillor Saxon, you might have to turn your video off again. We can't hear you. You need to turn your video off. Can't hear you. You've got serious issues with your broadband. You have to turn your video off, Councillor Saxon. Nobody can hear a word what you're saying. Thank you. No, we won't work with your video on. Right. I'd get your money back on that if I was you. I'd get your money back. Yeah. Councillor, while you rectify yourself, can we have Mark Anderson, please?
Yeah. Thank you. I'll move the recommendations. I too am disappointed to hear what the town clerk has said regarding the interpretation by East Lindsey District Council, whether we get a government money, which is government money is people's money regardless, because we actually pay the bills, the people pay the bills, the government actually decides what to do with our money. But we should have got that money as what Councillor Brooks said, because I emailed Robert Jenrick myself, And I got a reply from a civil servant saying likewise that we should have had some money, but it's East Lindsey District Council that made the decision under their interpretation of the law. And I think we need to write back as a council saying the interpretation that East Lindsey District Council have made against us getting money has caused us to increase our precept on our residents because of the interpretation done by East Lindsey District Council in denying money that was rightly ours.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Steve Kirk, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we need to be very careful with all these allegations we're making. The town clerk did say he thought it may be down to the interpretation. I would think it's probably got a lot more down to the minister saying in March for local authorities to spend whatever it took, and he would make sure they were reimbursed. And then in June going back on that and leaving authorities like East Lindsey £5 million out of pocket because they did what he said and refused to reimburse them. If we know for a fact East Lindsey have had the money and haven't sent it on, then that's something we need to take up with the officers at East Lindsey. But if we don't know for a fact, we still need to find out what the facts are from East Lindsey. So there's lots of accusations going around here, and they may be correct, or they may be totally unfounded. Can I suggest that the town clerk writes to Lydia at East Lindsey, and with the question, what has happened to our money? We were told by the minister in his letters to expect some, and see what the response is. That is, if he hasn't already done that.
I have done that, and I've also put in a freedom of information request, requesting detailed information regarding the allocation of monies, because I know that some money went to other councils in the East Lindsey area, but I've been unable to obtain the information. And as I say, it does come down to interpretation, and I've had that from a senior officer where they've actually said that they believe that there was the guidance was not written correctly, that originally came out, which presumably the minister has based his information on, and that it was subsequently changed. I haven't seen either of those pieces of writing. All I can see is the information that's still on the government website, which contains the statement by the Secretary of State, and also the indication that town and parish councils are eligible for funding. But as with all these things, they are then interpreted by a set of rules that is provided, which we haven't got access to, by the local authorities who divvy out the money. And that appears to be where the issue is, that the guidance and the statements are not in line with each other.
Okay, thank you. I think one of the things what needs to be pointed out, whether it's right or wrong information we're receiving, whichever report, is the fact that we're let down by the Secretary of State not replying to us. I think that's one of the biggest disappointments. So we're not getting no answers. Councillor Brooks, Danny Brooks, please.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just for clarity, I read the letter and it just said, I had a copy of the letter and it said that town and parish councils have done a fantastic job throughout the lockdown, and he was going to give more money to the towns and parish councils for the work that they had done. And if you hadn't received any, contact your primary council to discuss where the money is. I've got a copy of the letter. Thank you.
Councillor Steve Kirk, please.
Yeah, thank you. Just for clarification from the town clerk, so he's aware of some councils in East Lindsey which have had this money. If that's the case and we haven't, this is absolutely scandalous. If some councils have been chosen and some haven't been chosen due to a set of rules that we know nothing about. So it doesn't need to confirm or otherwise that now, unless he wants to, because I'm more than happy to go and challenge some officers to find out why the largest town in East Lindsey, I would argue one of the largest contributors to the district, isn't worthy of money when other towns or parishes within the district are felt to be, because I would find that is a, we've had conversations already about discrimination, but I would say that's discrimination of the highest order when we are one of the most deprived areas within the district.
Thank you, Councillor Kirk. Yes, the town clerk has brought this before to the previous meetings where he is aware that money has been paid out. Just like to clarify that, town clerk, am I correct?
Yeah, yes, I'm aware of from another authority in the East Lindsey area that they received money right at the very earliest part of the lockdown, and I don't obviously I'm not going to name them tonight, but I'm quite happy to speak to Councillor Kirk tomorrow and let him know the details behind that.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Kirk, you're happy to receive those and pass and
Yeah,
go forward with that?
Certainly, no. What's right is right, and this doesn't appear to be right, does it?
No, we didn't think so. Councillor Mark Anderson, please.
Yeah, I too got a copy of the same letter I was copied in, which Councillor Brooks has got. I've still got it on my email chain regarding that letter he got. But I still think, as with public money being shunted about between local authorities, we have a right as elected members, because we represent the people, to know who's been paid and who's not been paid, and not just kept to one person.
Thank you. Well, I think the town clerk has got is working on this and continuing to do so, and with Councillor Kirk. So, do we have a proposal that we note this and move forward? Councillor Dan Kirk, please. Councillor Dan Kirk.
I'm happy to propose that we note the report, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a seconder, please?
Mayor, there was to support the approach and also to approve the temporary increase in hours as well.
Oh, yes.
Yes, I moved all that, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sorry, you did. Councillor
seconded.
Kirk's a seconder. Sorry, Councillor Anderson, you did. You moved them en bloc and added them. So we've got it proposed and seconded. So all in favour, please show. Thank you. Well, that brings us to the end of tonight's meeting. What we can say is that you need to stay safe. There's it's obviously still right out there, and we need to be cautious and keep the space, hands facing space. Next week we've got the management meeting. If you'd like to join us, we'll be live on Zoom. And I just say, everybody take care and thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you very much.
Yeah, good night all. Good night.
Good night. Good night all.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.